Let me begin with you, Mr. Johnson. Since President Xi assumed power, it seems that we've seen a discernible change in China's behavior. It's more aggressive, more risk-oriented, and seems pretty much impervious to U.S. pressure. As today's hearing title suggests, it seems we are entering a new era in U.S.-China relations. First, would you agree? And second, how can the administration recalibrate its strategy to move more effectively deal with China's fundamentally different approach to foreign and economic policies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my perception that indeed we are entering a fundamentally different period under Xi Jinping's leadership with regard to his approach to Sino-U.S. relations, but also to China's foreign policy writ large. And I think there are several reasons for that. The first is that unlike his most immediate predecessor, Hu Jintao, Xi Jinping is a very confident leader, someone who does command the system, has a deep political network that runs throughout the system, and has very strong views about how he thinks about China's place in the world. It was very telling, for example, when he was first revealed as the new leader of China. In his opening speech, which was very brief, he put a lot of emphasis on these concepts of the Chinese dream and the great rejuvenation of the Chinese people and China as a nation. And I think we see this stream running through his foreign policy approach. With regard to the U.S., I think the fundamental thing to understand in terms of how Xi Jinping approaches the relationship is that unlike his two predecessors, who arguably spent between 80 and 90% of their foreign policy energy or bandwidth, if you will, focused on Sino-U.S. relations, whether those relations were good, bad, or indifferent, Xi Jinping does not operate that way. His view is that he does not, of course, he's not seeking to sort of diminish the status of U.S.-China relations, but he's not as solicitous or desirous of the relationship as his predecessors have been. And I think we've seen that time and again. So just but one example, you had the Sunnylands meeting between our two leaders. Things seem very solid in that meeting, a good opportunity for the two presidents to be able to get to know each other and to think about how we might indeed go through this new style of major country relations. But since then, we've seen this drift come in, and traditional mechanisms like the strategic and economic dialogue between our two countries, which in my assessment has become a fairly useless entity, we're not connecting on this level. And I think it's because when President Xi looks at President Obama, he sees a leader who, unlike himself, is not confident, is not control of his own system, is not reliable. And in the long management of U.S.-China relations, the most important thing to the Chinese side is consistency. They will take a difficult position from the United States when necessary if they know that the leader is consistent, and they have real questions about the consistency in President Obama's approach. In terms of his broader foreign policy strategy and the things you mentioned with regard to his approach to the neighbors, what we see, I think, is a fundamental rejection, if you will, by Xi Jinping of the long-standing foreign policy dictum stated by Deng Xiaoping, which is that China should bide its time, keep a low profile, never take the lead internationally. It was very telling to me that when the foreign minister, Wang Yi, gave his first press conference in the spring at their national legislative session, when asked by the CCTV reporter in the audience, so obviously a planted question, how would you describe the success of China's foreign policy under the new leadership in the first year in office? He said, in a word, active, which tells us a lot, because 3-5 years ago, no senior Chinese official would have described their foreign policy as active. Okay. So how should the U.S. respond to this?
Could I cut you off there, because I'm almost out of time. And I think, Mr. Chang, would you respond to that question as well in a minute or two?
I think that when Xi Jinping looks at Obama and Obama looks at Xi Jinping, he must think that the Chinese leader himself is unreliable. And the problem is of distress in the political system. June 26th, Politburo meeting, Xi Jinping admits that his signature campaign against corruption, which is really just a political purge, was stalemated. And then he talked in melodramatic terms about his own death. Well, there have been a number of coup rumors of the last 3 years, some of very recent vintage. We don't know a lot of what's going on, but we can see that there are things which are not consistent with a stable political system in China. So that, I think, is going to be driving U.S.-China relations.
Okay, thank you very much. My time has expired.